Hi, and welcome to the third episode of Doll Belly Knits. If you're here, that means that you know you can find me on YouTube as Doll Belly Knits, but you can also find me on Ravelry and Instagram as Doll Belly. My podcast, I like to focus on using what you have on hand, or even recycling and reusing things to make most of the time practical and sometimes beautifully impractical knitwear and crochet wear. Gonna jump right in. I got something really exciting that I recently did, but I'm gonna go over works in progress first. The one work in progress that I had talked about in the first episode is a pair of socks for my daughter for her birthday. Actually haven't knit them or touched them since that podcast. So if you want to see them, jump on over to episode 1 and have a look. They're basically a variant of the Atlantic Current sock. Just did a little bit of math and altered it so that it would be more to her size since she's an adolescent. But yeah, so if you want to have a look at that, you can either look at that in episode 1 or you can look at it on my whips, my projects in Ravelry. But also in episode 2, I talked about those socks a little bit because I'm knitting them with 3.75 millimeter needles, which is actually kind of large for sock knitting. And I explained a little bit about how I got to that particular fork in the road in episode 2. So please do go back and take a look if you're interested in those things. But my daughter's sock had to move aside for my mom's sock. Her birthday is before my daughter's, and I don't know why that didn't register. Maybe I was just excited to get started on my daughter's socks. But in the meantime, I've been working on a pair of Effervesce socks for my mom for her birthday, and I did show them last time, and I have them here. I am at the point where I am working on the heel flap. I'm doing that one at a time because as you can see, I'm knitting them 2 at a time on 2 circular needles, about 16 inches, 40 centimeter needles. This is how I do it so I can do it 2 at a time. And if I was going to work both heel flaps at the same time, it would just be a lot of moving stitches around. So I'm going to do one and do the other, then I'll turn the heel on the one and then the other, and then I'll be able to go back to knitting in the round. These socks, however, have been dubbed the socks of doom. I have challenged myself that in 2018 I wanted to try new things, in particular with sock knitting. I love sock knitting. It's the whole reason I learned how to knit, and I always have a pair of socks on the needles, but like I explained in previous episodes, I got to a point that I was knitting with 3.75 millimeters needles, which are pretty large, and I also was basically doing vanilla socks. Granted, I was using really beautiful self-striping sock yarn, and all of the socks that I've made, I'm very happy, very pleased with, and so are my recipients, which is also makes it pleasing, as knitters know. To give somebody to something and have them really appreciate it. But you know, at this point I could probably do it in my sleep because it was just a stockinette stitch, simple heel, simple toe. So I wanted to challenge myself a little bit, and one of the ways that I decided I would challenge myself was to bring the needle size down to something that is a little bit more normal for sock knitting. So these are the first in my effort to challenge myself, and it has been quite a challenge. I have had to restart these socks 4 times for various reasons. I messed up on casting on the stitches, I read the pattern wrong, and then I read the pattern wrong again and didn't have the right size. And so I finally feel I have the right size and I got the pattern down and I'm moving along. And now I think I may actually run out of yarn. The yarn that I'm using is Deborah Norville, the Serenity sock weight yarn. It's actually the yarn that I used to make the fairy cakes that I made for Valentine's Day, which you can check them out. It's a Susan Claudino design, but you can see my finished fairy cakes either in episode 1 or you can check them out on my projects page in Ravelry. But I used this yarn to make the fairy cakes and I felt like I had enough left over to make a pair of socks, provided that I use different colors for the cuff and the heel and the toes. I even weighed it before I got started and I had more than 100 grams collectively. So really it should be enough. I hand wound the balls, so it is difficult to judge how much yarn you actually have yet left when you wind it up, because you know, if you're particularly tense, it's going to be a tight ball, or if you're, you know, laughing, having a couple drinks, it's going to be a loose ball. So I don't know, and at this point I just have to keep going, and if it doesn't work out, then it's just going to be a lesson learned as part of my let's try new things in sock knitting for 2018. Other than that, other than these difficulties that I'm having, I am very happy with the socks, how they look. I like the pattern. Once it clicked inside my brain, I don't even really need to look at the chart anymore to know what's coming next. So it is actually a really lovely pattern. So I do hope, fingers crossed, that this will work out and my mother will get another pair of lovely socks, which, God bless my mom. She loves my socks. She actually has a drawer in one of her dressers that have my socks in it that I've made her over the years. And so that's really special for me, and I hope it's really special for her too. But yeah, so that's kind of my work in progress right now, because I do have a deadline. So I'm kind of monogamously knitting those right now. However, what I did do for the first time, and I had mentioned it in the last episode, and I showed you in the last episode, I saw a YouTube video on the man who knits, and basically he goes to thrift stores and he picks out sweaters and then he rips them apart and he upcycles or recycles the wool, and he can, you know, get cashmere, get wool. He likes to work with natural fibers, so he only looks for those in the thrift store, and you can get quite a bit of wool for a little bit of time and a little bit of money. So I thought I would give it a go, and I did find a sweater at the thrift store in town that I believe was a hand knit sweater. It had buttons on it that you could see that they were actually sewn on by hand. The stitching was, you know, uneven for that part, and there was no tag inside for a maker, and it didn't even look like that there had been a tag that was cut out. So I was really lucky to find that, and Frankie's behind me on the couch. Here, you want to say hello? Hello, world. Oh, it's a bird. Okay, she's like digging behind me. I don't know what she's doing. Shush. So I started ripping it apart. And basically what I did was, the first thing I did was I took off the buttons, and it had been sewn on with black thread. Now, if you didn't see the sweater from the last episode, the sweater is black as well. It's definitely a wool variety. It might be wool with some nylon in it. It could be pure wool. I'm not 100% sure, but it's definitely wool, and it's got like marled white bits in it. But overall, it's all black, which made it difficult to work with to see. I did use a seam ripper because I want it to be as precise as possible, and I wasn't trying to just hack it apart. So I basically took the buttons off first, saved them for another project, and then I removed the sleeves one at a time. And that was a little bit difficult because the sleeves were actually inset sleeves. So not only did I have to undo the seam on the arm, I had to go all the way around the sweater. So yeah, it just took a little bit of time, and with it being black yarn, and even though I had my glasses on, even though I had natural daylight, it was a little bit difficult to see what I was doing. So note to self, I probably wouldn't pick another black sweater to undo. But the next thing I did was I had to work on the collar because the sweater had a large collar, and I'll put photos in of each step along the way throughout this video so you can see the process and as it went on. So the collar was a large collar that had then been flipped down and tacked to the back. So that was the next thing that I had to tackle. And I thought that it was also a separate piece that had been sewn onto the sweater, but I was wrong. It was, all the stitches were picked up. So that actually made it kind of difficult to undo that. And so I kind of skipped over that a little bit. There were some tiny shoulder seams, 2 to 3 inches. I undid them. And then I had like this weird Y-shaped piece left that I just had to try to figure out how to undo. And I did unfortunately poke some holes in some places here and there. So some of the yarn did get wasted or thrown away because it was just way too little pieces or too short of lengths to make it worth actually saving. But yeah, I'm trying to look at my notes here. Here we go. Try to remember what I did. Yeah, so that's what did. I undid the sleeves. I finally figured it out. And I got several hanks of wool from the project. I don't remember exactly how many, but I have one here to show you. And actually what I did was I used the back of my kitchen chair that fortunately it had 2 little like tower type spindles on it, and I was able to just wrap that right around and then tie it into the little hanks and stuff like that. So what I'm going to do next after I have all these hanks together, I'm going to soak them and try to take some of the curliness out. And then I will weigh it all, and in the next episode, I will be able to tell you exactly how much wool I recovered from the sweater. I paid 5 pounds for the sweater. Don't know how much that is in dollars. I would have to convert that in my head, and I don't do math, so I will put it in the show notes. But yeah, I'm really excited to see the actual finished project. I mean, this is exciting in itself because I did get quite a bit of wool. And I don't know why I was thinking, oh, I could just make a couple pairs of socks out of it when it was a whole sweater to start with. Again, math's not my strong suit. So yeah, I'll be able to make lots of socks with this. And, you know, it is, I would have to knit up a swatch to see what I get for a gauge, but I'm thinking it's a sport weight or maybe a DK. It's definitely not fingering or sock weight, but it's all wrinkled up because it's been in, you know, as part of the sweater. So I'll have to wait and see what it looks like after it is a little more straightened to really determine what the weight is in terms of the size of the yarn. And then from there I can figure out what kind of projects that I project or projects I would like to make with it. I just think it's really exciting and really neat to think that this sweater had a life all of its own before it came to me. So yeah, that's certainly something else to possibly contemplate in regards to what I'm going to do with it and what project I'm going to make out of it. If I could just, I can. It's my podcast, right? Back to my socks for just a second. One of the things that I had forgotten to talk about that I did want to talk about was the fact that I am using these two circular needles, and they are smaller than I'm used to, but again, it's kind of I like to use what I have on hand and make do with what I have. Someone had given me the one needle. They're both 2.5s. That's the current size. But someone had given me this needle, which is a Knit Pick Pro Nova. Yeah, that's right. I believe that's right. If not, I will correct myself. So this is the one needle, and then I did have to buy another needle to make a set because I didn't have another one. I do like ChiaoGoo needles, so I went ahead and purchased a ChiaoGoo lace needle, 2.5. These are two totally different needles, completely different. The ChiaoGoo, much pointier than the Nova. So I am having some problems when I use this because the yarn splits a little bit, and that's let's say that's a fault of the yarn. I do like the yarn. I'm very happy with it, but it's not wound as tight as it maybe could be. So when you're using a pointy needle like this, it wants to split the yarn. But for this particular pattern, that's actually a good thing because you have to juggle the stitches around to create the cables, because you don't need a cable needle to do this pattern. And if you use ChiaoGoo lace, you definitely be able to pick up the needles easier and juggle them around as is necessary for the pattern. The Nova, definitely more blunt. So I'm not having the problems with splitting the yarn, but I am having the problems with being able to pick up the needle and juggle it around. So both of them, I like them both. I think they're very nice tools, very smooth knitting. I'm not having any problems with the joins, nothing like that. But they are definitely two different needles, and they both have their pros and cons. And it's interesting using two different needles in the same pattern. So just a little bit of tip there. If you want something that's pointier because you need to pick up needles or you need to pick up stitches and juggle them around, the ChiaoGoo definitely has the pointer tip. If you're not necessarily interested in that and you're just looking for a nice smooth knit, the Nova, excellent for that. So yeah, wish me luck. Seriously, luck. Okay, and then the last thing that I wanted to talk about that I would put under the category of magical memories. I need to get like some effects there, magical memories. It's actually a current phenomena, something that's happening right now. I am teaching a crochet club at my daughter's school. I'm not sure if I mentioned this in the last episode, but here it is again. So I teach crochet club at my daughter's school once a week on Wednesdays. This is the second time that I've done this. I did a knitting club once before. But this is the second crochet group that I'm having this year. They're a little bit tougher than the first group, and it's probably because they're a little bit younger than the first group. So, yeah, they are picking it up, which is good. And last week, I actually had the most crocheting happen, the most crochet objects leave with them, but woo, getting them to sit still was a little bit difficult. So I would really love to hear anybody's ideas. If you've done this before, if you've taught children how to crochet and several children at the same time, I would really love to hear your input on tips and tricks of how to keep their attention. Also, I would love to hear what kind of projects you've done. Have done. I do have a picture of a group project from the first group, and I will insert it in the video here or at the end. So that's cool when everybody, contributes something, and then you can make like a wall hanging or whatever. But I'm looking for more individual projects that the kids can work on and have something that they can take away with them, because the group project I gave to the school, and the school has it on display. So yes, it's great. They can still go in and they can see, I did that. This is my piece, et cetera, et cetera. That's great. But I'd like to have something that they can take home as well. So I definitely would love to hear thoughts and comments on that. So definitely put a comment in the comment box below, or you can find me on Ravelry, Instagram, and just, say hey or tell me what you think. I think that's about it. Again, another short and sweet episode. Hopefully the lighting is not too bad. I'm working with the natural light, and the sun keeps going in and out, and it seems like if I move closer or further away from the camera, it changes coloring as well. But it's all part and parcel of the learning process, is it not? So yeah, thanks for joining me for this episode. Don't forget to subscribe so you know when the next episode is coming out. Click like, all those things that YouTubers tell you to do. And yeah, also put comments of things that maybe you would like to see me do or talk about here on the show. So thanks for joining me. I hope to see you again next time. And until then, happy knitting.